So I recently made a video about the 2023 Knife of the Year contender list. I had 5 knives on there, 5 awesome knives, and I think that they are definitely contenders. However, it seems like I can't escape this specific one. This is the Null Knives Voodoo, and when I made that list, several people, including my buddy Jason, aka Knife Dope, reached out and said, "You got it all wrong, you have to include the Null Knives Voodoo." But the problem is they are all sold out. You can't just get them anywhere. You either got in on the pre-order or have the most lightning quick fingers on the internet and managed to snag one on the drop. Now they're gone, but this one's in my possession because my buddy Jason was willing to lend it to me so that we could have this discussion, so that we could break it down, so that we could see once and for all, is this a contender for the 2023 Knife of the Year countdown? It's a showdown. There is so many good knives on that list, and we're about to talk about whether or not this knife deserves to be there. This is the Null Knives Voodoo. Let's check it out. All right, guys, if you couldn't tell, I am super excited to start talking about this Null Knives Voodoo. And I know what you're asking, dude, where is our unboxing? Don't ask me, ask Jason from Knife Dope. He sent this to me along with a couple other knives in a knife roll. So no box today. That's okay. We're not going to fluff about. We're here to do business. We're here to talk about whether or not the Null Knives Voodoo deserves to be considered in the running for Knife of the Year 2023. And I'm going to keep it real. I'm going to keep it a buck, okay? There's some stiff competition for this race. Namely, the Precision Knife Works Warntack and the Vosteed RS Chaos. And guys, I'm gonna be 100% real with you. This is stiff competition, and it has a lot to do with the price tag. But I'm not going to go into those other knives right now because I want to talk about this Voodoo. This Voodoo is a knife that I desperately wanted, but the funds weren't there for the pre-order, and it definitely wasn't there for that very limited drop that they did. Here's how this is going to go. I'm going to go over the specs real quick, and then we'll talk about the pros, we'll talk about the cons, I'll give you my final opinion, and then I'll answer the question of, is it a contender for Knife of the Year 2023? Should all the other knives just pack up and go home? Well, let's find out. This specific version is $360, and it is the least expensive of the versions that were available. There was one that instead of having micarta, it had carbon fiber, and that was going for $400. And then of course there was the launch exclusive, which I believe was around $500. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong and you got a launch exclusive with some crazy carbon fiber. But I do believe those were about $500. So $360 is the less expensive version. Notice how I'm not saying the word cheap. And that's because at $360, I expect perfection. Here's the specs. For the materials, we're looking at M390 on the blade, micarta inserts with titanium bolsters. It is a titanium bolster lock, and it of course has titanium backspacer and a 3D milled titanium pocket clip that unfortunately is not reversible. At least this version isn't, but I do believe that they made some for lefties. It's running on ceramic bearings and a single-sided captive D-shaped pivot, which is great. We've got T8 hardware all around, which is honestly, I would be very, very upset if it wasn't at this price point, but it is. It does, in fact, have a deployment fuller. I don't know what to call these inset deployment holes because it's not really a hole and it's not really a fuller, deployment inset. I don't know. It also has these triangular shaped thumb studs, not a front flipper. that's okay. It doesn't need to be. We've got what I would consider to be a 50-50 finger choil right there, and some really good milling being done to scallop out around the handle scales and do its darndest to increase the ergonomics, whether you're in a choked up position or a regular position. The blade shape is, well, I mean, would you call this a modified harpoon sheep's foot? It's almost a Wharncliffe, but this is not in fact a straight edge. It's ever so slightly curved. So maybe the best way to call this would be a reverse Tonto harpoon, because we have this harpoon shape up here at the top with this very deep swedge that is hollow ground. That's weird, but it's really, really cool. If you don't know about this channel, I actually like designs that are different, and congratulations to Null Knives for creating a design that I've never seen before. This is 100% standing alone in the crowd as far as the design language is concerned. We're looking at 8¼ inches overall with a 3.6 inch blade. It's got 60 to 61 hardness, which means that they have dialed in the HRC on this M390. Now, do I wish that M390 on this blade was more like 62 to 63? Sure, we all do, but let's be honest for a second. Manufacturers aren't doing that because it's just way too damaging on their machines to manufacture at that hardness. So 60 to 61 is what I would consider to be acceptable, and it's nothing less than what I would expect from the OEM, which in this case is Riot. So Riot, as always, does a phenomenal job. And for those of you out there that are about to say, I only buy American-made knives, listen, if we had more American-made manufacturers that could manufacture to the level that Riot is capable of, we wouldn't even be having a conversation. It would be over and we'd stop buying knives from China. But the fact of the matter is that we don't, and they do amazing work, and they are widely considered to be one of the best fit and finish manufacturers out there, period. It's time to talk about the pros, and the first pro that I want to talk about is in fact the ergos. This is a really good EDC size. 8¼ inches is a full-size knife, but it's not too big. It's going to fit a lot of people's hands, especially with this 50-50 finger choil. I think that that's fantastic. I really enjoy that. Also, the blade shape is great. This is, in fact, what I would consider to be a reverse Tonto harpoon or a modified reverse Tonto, because it is very close to a Wharncliffe, but it's not. And then it has this little Spanish tip razor point, which is actually going to be really good for piercing into things. It gets very thin behind the edge with this deep hollow grind. How thin? I'm not entirely sure because they didn't list it on the website, which is unfortunate. And I don't have calipers. Hit a thumbs up if you want me to buy calipers so I can actually give you that information. But I will say this, it's extremely thin. That hollow grind is really great for cutting, and it's not just a self-defense knife. This is actually going to be a knife that's good for tasks as well. The ergos feel great, and part of that is due to this really competent jimping. That's right, I'm calling it competent because the jimping is actually the size of my thumb. That's perfect. I have average size thumbs and it fits, and you can tell that they went based off the average size. The jimping itself is not too toothy. It's also not too shallow. It gives you enough grip, and then it lets you get on with the rest of your day. And I think that that's pretty fantastic. Let's talk about the action. The action on this is really good. It's very good. And that's not just because of the ceramic ball bearings. It's also because of the ceramic detent ball. That's not something that people talk about. We always hear about ceramic bearings, but to be honest with you, if you really want to know what gives your knife that glide, if it has that super glossy glide, chances are it has a ceramic detent ball as well. So you want both. And if you have both, because, well, it's just really good is what it is. Next, I'm enamored by this pocket clip because yet again, we managed to get a pocket clip where they could have probably mailed it in. Null Knives could have said, you know what, let's just do a basic pocket clip. Let's make it 3D milled titanium and call it a day. But no, we've got more milling. We've got 3 different surfaces, 4 if you count the back of that pocket clip. And so that's actually really good. Something else, which is a huge pro in my book, is that they could have made this just a regular titanium frame lock. And honestly, it probably still would have been really good. I would have liked to have seen maybe a $250 to $300 version that was just all titanium and make it a frame lock. But because it's actually a bolster lock, there are some good benefits to that. You're not going to be putting too much pressure on that lock bar when you go to deploy it. You're just not, because the bolsters actually protect it from that happening. The thumb studs are something that I actually expected to not like, because typically speaking, I do tend to be more of a minimalist. If we have a deployment option here, we don't need one here. But in this case, it actually adds to the design. It's functional, and because of the shape of the triangle thumb stud, it's not going to get in the way of any sharpening devices. That's actually pretty cool. You could tell that they thought about this knife, then they thought about it some more, sat on it, and then they finally designed it and said, yeah, now it's good to go. And I'm not disappointed in the slightest. Something that I'm not the biggest fan of is Riot's micarta. It tends to not feel like regular micarta, but it's not bad. Now, it is kind of a push towards the more expensive versions, because if you buy this knife, you could say to yourself, well, you know, it's only 40 more bucks, and instead of micarta, I could get me some really, really good carbon fiber. Now, if you bought the micarta and you decided later that you wanted carbon fiber, it's a $60 upgrade on the website. And as of right now, those carbon fiber handle scales are actually still available. So if you bought the micarta and wish that you got the carbon fiber, you will pay a little bit extra for that decision now. But the good news is that you can still get it. That is, in fact, a pro. Another pro is the fact that we've got T8 hardware all around. We've got it on the lock bar insert, we've got it on the pivot, and we've got it on the handle scales. Thank you. I don't believe that we have it here on the thumb stud. Let's find out. This is T8. Is it on the thumb stud? Nope. That is, in fact, T6. So almost everywhere. But let's be honest, most people are not going to be removing the thumb stud from their knife. And I just generally don't suggest it. I know a lot of people cut themselves when they do that. So yeah, I'll say it again. I'm not a huge fan of Riot's micarta. It just doesn't feel like good micarta. An example of good micarta is what you'd find on the TRM Shadow Lock. And yeah, this is probably my favorite micarta from your American-made Three Rivers manufacturing. So Riot, if you're listening, which you probably aren't, but if you are, change up your micarta, take some notes from Three Rivers Manufacturing, because that is actually the micarta that I would prefer. Did I mention that this is, in fact, my opinion? Now, I do have two cons. The first con is the fact that the pocket clip is not reversible. Now, I know what you're going to say, but they would have had to drill holes and do an insert. Listen, it's a $360 knife on the low end. They had the money to add an insert. They had the availability to do that. It would not have been difficult to add a micarta insert, or better yet, to design the pocket clip to actually attach over here to maybe the backspacer or the top of the scale. There's not a ton of lefties out there, but at this price point, I do want to see some more consideration for our left-handed southpaw brethren, which just isn't there. The next one is, in fact, the price tag. And I get it. Riot is not cheap. They are one of the most premium manufacturers out there. Have I paid more money for knives made by Riot? Absolutely. However, at the $360 price point, I do still think that they could have given us a better material for the base level. I would have liked to have seen the regular basket weave carbon fiber at the base level, and then maybe have the micarta at an even more affordable level. When I say more affordable, what I really mean is like $300. The $300 price point on this knife would have been absolutely fantastic. By no means am I saying that this knife is not worth the price tag. What I am saying is that they really could have captured the market better had they given us just one more option. To me, this seems like a mid-level option, but it's actually at a super premium price tag. Before you tell me that $360 is not a whole lot for this knife, I want you to consider how many other knives out there made by Riot cost less money than this. I could name a few right now, but I don't want to make this video go on for forever. With all of that being said, we're here to answer the question of, is this knife in fact a contender for 2023 Knife of the Year? Here's the difficult part for me. It's difficult to answer that question because they didn't make enough of these to get these out to a ton of people. Now, knife collectors, enthusiasts like myself do actually like that. We like having cool knives that not everyone has. We like having that conversation starter. It's part of the fun of being a collector, is getting something that not everyone has. Had I not had the chance to experience this, I might have actually said no. But having been able to hold this and check it out and check things like the lockup, which by the way is perfect, and the centering, which by the way is perfect, and the ergos, which by the way is perfect, I don't really have a choice. Of course, this Null Knives Voodoo is 100% a contender for Knife of the Year here in 2023. Is it a deadlock for the win? No. I still maintain that the Vosteed RS Chaos and especially the Precision Knife Works Warntack are really, really good options on that contender list as well. Don't forget, this is 100% based on my opinion. You could end the contest for yourself right now and say the Null Knives Voodoo is 100% the knife of the year, or not. It doesn't really matter. We're going to talk more about this showdown later on in the year, especially when we get closer to 2024. My, how time flies. But tell you what, guys, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments section down below. And if you've enjoyed so far and you haven't done so yet, hit the subscribe button. If you want to watch more awesome knife content, go ahead and click on the video that pops up next.